Hi, my name is Dee Cowell, and today I'm going to be painting some flowers for you. I went to the Chelsea Flower Show, and when I came back I was very inspired to paint delphiniums. So I found a local delphinium farm and went and took a whole lot of photographs. And so today I'm going to try and recreate a group of delphiniums. And what I'm going to do is use the grate and shake directly onto the paper. And I've picked up my lightest color first. And one of the tips I can pass on is to work in either cool colors or warm colors when you use this technique. Because if you mix red, yellow and blue together, you'll end up with various shades of brown. So I tend to keep to cool colors or keep to warm colors when I use this particular technique of painting. And it's all about capturing this rather super texture that I'm creating with the grate and shake. So here we go, just popping a little bit of alizarin crimson in here and there, and possibly a little bit of very dark colour in as well, particularly in the centre. And now I've got to spritz it using our rather nice spritzer and holding the spritz up quite high so that the puff of air doesn't move that texture around too much. And the idea is that it dissolves in the water and releases its pigment and gives you some very unpredictable shapes, which is what I quite like. Once they've all dissolved a little bit, I'll get the spritzer in really close to the pigment and try and get it to just dissolve a little bit. And then I'm going to use a flat brush and work into all this lovely wet texture and try and create some delphiniums out of all of this. So great fun to use. Right, using a flat brush, and just giving it a minute or two to dissolve, I'm going to pick up the pigment and just try and get some of the character of the delphiniums into it, wiping off the excess paint, because you do pick up some of the pigment onto the back of your brush as you work it around. Another brush, a nice big flat brush, is just going to wet the edges and wet the center of the painting so that I get rather a nice wet into wet effect as I work my way down. I'm going to pick up some blues now and just run that into the pinks, and the whole time just allowing the paint to run into all this water. I've got the watercolor paper at a 45-degree angle, which is just encouraging it to run down. If you work flat, it's not as successful. You do need a bit of an angle on the paint. So here and there, I want to try and keep some of that bobbly texture, pushing it onto the paper itself, making sure it's all sticking in, and then turning over and big brush every now and again just to wet underneath it. The whole thing runs beautifully. And once it's nice and wet, I'm then going to try and recapture some of the white. And this time I'm going to be using a painting knife and scraping back into that paint and creating little petal-like shapes. And I don't know if you can see how the colors are running into each other. I'm just moving this painting knife around and trying to get little glimpses of petals here and there. You do have to work fairly quickly. And of course the petals are smaller up at the top, and then as they come down the flowers are open and you get these rather nice big areas down here. And of course I can always take a brush, dry my brush, and just pick up any drips that I don't want, or maybe use them to give a little hint of some of the foliage that I'm going to be doing later on. So that could be quite interesting to do. And I'll take those into greens later. And now I've got to let this whole thing dry and finish off the painting, working mostly negative spaces and putting some of the greenery in. I'm now going to work with a water-soluble crayon or pencil and go back in and look for the negative space. I've got a blue one in my hand, and all I'm going to do is look for little places where it looks like a petal peeking out. And if you look at my reference material, it's almost like there's little eyes in the center. Sometimes they're white and sometimes they're dark. And that's what I'm going to use as a starting point to try and pull some of this frothiness into something that looks remotely like delphinium flowers. And so working all the way down with just one color, I'll try and pick out little shapes like that. When I come to paint the flowers, what I do is I use two brushes, and with a dark color in my hand, one brush will pick up and go back into where all those lines are and just do a little bit of an outline like that. And then the other brush, which has just got water just damped off, not too wet, I'm going to pull that intense pigment away. So it looks like it all happened all in one go, but in actual fact, I don't work more than about an inch or two down the paper like this, and just where there's a nice light opportunity like that, put a little bit of dark behind it. This brush has just got water on it, and this brush, I've picked up the pigment directly from the art bar, and it's all meant to look miraculously as if it all happened in one shot. And so you just settle back and enjoy the entire experience of working with negative space. And if you get lost, it's just a matter of putting a few little eyes in, picking up the color and working around the shapes like that. So I'm changing now into purple, and I'll pick up some of the red and go into the red, but while I've got blue on my hands, I'm going to work across the painting and keep changing your color. So sometimes I'll be digging into a little bit of blue, and other times I'll be taking a bit of purple. I've actually used the grate and shake and created some purple wash. I've grated some of the color into here, and I don't know if you can see. I've diluted it with a bit of water, and I'm going to use a dipping pen so that when I come into this area, instead of using a brush, I can also do a little bit of this kind of thing. But once again, taking a damp brush, just flicking it away like that. So there's so many different ways of working with art bars. I find them fabulous to work with. It's a very free style of working. And I think I've used enough of the purple to outline with, so I'm just going to put this down and once again pick up the blue. And this time maybe two different blues. So one brush is picking up the paint and just doing a few little scribbly details, not working too far ahead, so that you have an opportunity to soften it off. And while I'm here, maybe I can just do a little bit of the bud outline again. So just pushing on that brush and doing a few of these rather beautiful, it's almost like a tadpole shape, but it's just a nice contrast to all that frothiness that's around it. I think we need some red. I'm just going to rinse my brushes, dry one of them off, pick up the red and work on this side of the painting. Once again, same thing, negative space, outline, lift off, do a few dots, outline. You can keep going on this. You could spend hours and hours. I love working in negative space, but there comes a time where we need to do a bit of greenery. So I'm now going to pick up my green colors and work into the bottom of the painting. I'm picking up a yellow, a green, and a blue. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is actually use it sideways on to draw with, like that. I quite like this rough paper. It's 140 pounds in weight, but it's got a lovely tooth to it, and it's all about creating different textures. Then putting a little bit of the yellow directly on like that, and then with one of these brushes, I need another hand, I'm going to mix my greens, pick up the green, and work back up into that negative space, this time cutting with the green into the negative space, and then maybe with my brush, just soften off. So a little bit more water onto that green, picking up the green, taking it nice and dark in places. And it's just meant to anchor the whole painting at the base. I look at the bottom and I'm not too happy with the negative space down here. It's a little bit too strong. So I thought it might benefit by having a few leaves come across and just give it more of a base. So I'm using the art bar sideways on, and just indicating where a couple of leaves are going to go. And then using my brush, which I've just damped off a little bit, I'm going to pick up that colour. I'm also going to pick up the colour directly off the Artbars and just really soften the effect of all these uprights. It looks a little bit too much like, I don't know, lollipop sticks to me. And so I think if I can just give it a little bit of definition at the base and make it a bit more interesting to look at, that will improve the painting. And so using a very loose approach, working with the knife, pushing the paint around, allowing it to drip, picking up the paint again, and I think that should soften it off and fit in with the overall effect. That's as far as I can take it for this demonstration, but of course when I look at it when it's bone dry, I might want to go back in with a pencil, I might want to go back in with the pen and finish it off, but of course time restraints prevent me from doing that. But even now I know there's bits and pieces that I'd like to do and finish it off, but this is as far as I can take it, so I hope you have a go.